This is Lead with Giants TV. I am honored to have here Barry Banther, the authors of A Leader's Gift, How to Earn the Right to Be Followed. He's our guest this evening. This is his book. In case you haven't seen it on the segment one, it is available on Amazon.com for you. Barry, welcome.
Thank you, Tal, very much. It's great to be with you and Liz again.
Great. Liz, welcome to our second segment.
Thanks, Tal.
Great to have you. So Barry, I know we left off really diving into the core of leading, having a lasting impression with our leadership, both at home and at work. We really need to hone on developing people, inspiring the best in others, and finding a way to take this journey together rather than alone. So talk to our audience about that. What can leaders do?
Well, the most important thing they can do is recognize that there's a principle that comes before all of our leading principles. Just this last week in Atlanta, Georgia, we had the funeral for one of the great business icons of the last 2 centuries, Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, a man born into poverty, who started his restaurant, a little restaurant there in Hateful, Georgia, worked and worked trying to find a creative way to better serve customers, and built a billion-dollar industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry, with thousands of lives who've been changed through the Leadership Institute that the Chick-fil-A restaurant sponsored. Ironically, Mr. Cathy died living in the same house he's lived in for 60 years. He was not a man impressed by his wealth, but he was impressed by his leadership. At his funeral, someone made this statement. In fact, I believe it was his youngest son that made this statement. He said, "My dad took the golden rule and built a business on it." Because anybody who came in touch with Truett Cathy at any time in his life recognized something. He cares about me. He's trying to do for me the very same thing he would do for himself. And that's the beginning point of leadership. I've been blessed to be the lead consultant on over 4 engagements in leadership. You know, there are all kinds of authors of leadership books. Some are academics. They're important. I served as a college president. I appreciate academics. Others are researchers and speakers, and some of my best friends are those. My uniqueness, if I have one, is that I've trained thousands of leaders. I've written over 50 leadership programs used by companies around the world. I'm on the ground in companies for decades helping them solve leadership problems. I've never had a client where a leader was able to excel and disparage his associates, not care about his associates. On the contrary, I've had some men and women who may not have been the smartest person in the room achieve extraordinary success as leaders because they began with this basic principle. You want every employee to believe they matter. They matter. You see them. You recognize that they're a human being and you're going to treat them that way. That's where it begins, Tal.
I really love that concept of seeing people, hearing their voice. I know we talked briefly a little bit before starting this, as Stephen Covey had the 8th principle about having a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. You touched on a couple of things there that is, you know, the golden rule. I mean, when you're doing all these engagements and training and talking to leaders, what seems to be the overriding challenge for leaders? What did they struggle with and they need more help on?
Well, it's a basic principle of my book. Here's the principal sentence, my book in one sentence. Leadership isn't something you do, it's someone you become. And the challenge that the leaders had first was they wanted me to give them some motivational tricks that they could use real quick to get their employees to do what they wanted them to do. And I had to convince them over time, partner with them and help them see that's manipulative and it won't work. You won't become a lasting leader doing that. So the first thing you have to do is nurture the skills of a leader in yourself. You've got to nurture the desire to be open with people. You can't have built-in prejudices against people because of their age, their gender, their race, the part of the country they're from, the college they went to. And you've got to be open. People have got to sense that you have time for them because they matter. You've got to be willing to invest time. And so many leaders today, and this is a problem today, that so many leaders, so many managers, especially down at the line level, Tal, they're working managers. And I'm spending a lot of time these days, in fact, I'll be doing this tomorrow with the CEO, helping him realize what he's asking his managers to do, and they manage hundreds of people. What he's asking them to do as leaders, they don't have the time to be able to do it. They're spending 60% of their time literally doing work and trying to lead in the other 40%. That balance won't mix. They'll end up giving lip service to it. So it's being open, it's giving the time, as we've talked about, it's listening, it's encouraging, and it's really showing appreciation. Being the one that can hold up that mirror to that employee after the task is complete and say, look at this strength you developed. Now you can use that strength to build even more on. And that creates lasting leadership. It creates lower retention. It creates a better scene to the bottom line. A lot of research done both by the Harvard Business Review and a host of journals that where employees are engaged, feel as though they're appreciated, translates to the bottom line.
I like that. Let me also have Liz jump into the conversation as well here.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. So very along the lines of not having time. A lot of companies rely on a human resource department to try to engage their employees and make them feel valued and all of these things, where it really needs to be happening out there on the floor in the trenches. Can you speak to us about that just a little bit?
Liz, you have the most insightful questions. That's so perceptive. Here's the way I would express that if I were with a Southern audience. You know, the grandparents can raise the kids. You can do that. You're not going to like that as a parent over time. HR plays a very important role, but that's a supportive role to the managers, and it's a help role to the managers, because it's the manager's responsibility to create the team that's going to follow him or her, that's going to look to her when they are in a challenge, that's going to believe that she's got their back. So if you try to turn that over to HR or to a training department, then I think it's going to be short-lived. Because so many times, and I know anyone listening to this who might be involved, who's watching, who does training, how many times have you had a group of supervisors and they'll raise their hand halfway through the training and say, are our managers going to take this? Our managers don't manage us this way. And that creates the inconsistency, the lack of integrity in an organization, and it spells doom for them. In fact, I've said to some clients, some prospects, when I've examined the organization and realized that they really do want someone else to create this leadership approach and someone else to do the work, I've said to them, you're better off not doing anything, because you're going to create an atmosphere where your associates believe you're going to care about them, believe you're going to listen, believe you're going to encourage, believe you're going to coach. And when you don't do it, they're going to be terribly disappointed. You're really better off in an environment doing nothing. So see HR as the partner. HR can be great in evaluating how well you're doing, but as a manager, as a leader, you're the head coach. It is your job to do this.
That's great. Barry, talk to us about, we've got a lot of emerging leaders in the young workforce now is joining the companies, businesses, organizations out there, and they're emerging leaders. What advice can you give to those who graduated college, ready to enter the workforce and really start in the leadership role?
It's a very good question, Tal. And today, and it doesn't matter if you refer to them as millennials or Gen Ys, or if you go back to Gen Xers, it doesn't matter which one of those demographics you look at, it's different than it once was. There was a time, and you can tell by looking at me, it was my time, when you would want to get into an organization and you'd want to become a leader as quickly as you could, and that meant becoming a supervisor and then a manager, then a director, and then a vice president, and you sort of, the phrase we would use is climb the corporate ladder. There are a lot of people today for whom climbing that corporate ladder isn't as important. So here's what I say to them. The skills of a great leader, the qualities of a great leader, the gifts of a leader that I write about, they're important for influence on the job. For example, one of the very first gifts that we talk about in my book, my new book, is the gift of openness, as you and I have talked about. Well, as an employee, if I'm new on the job, I'm just out of college, and I'm in my first job, if I can take those principles of openness and share that not just with the people in my department, but cross-functionally in other departments, or share that openness with customers or clients if I'm customer-facing, the very same skills that we expect today of a successful, effective leader, they're good skills for an employee or an associate or a professional. And along the way, you're preparing yourself so that if that leadership opportunity, that management opportunity comes your way, you can say yes to it and you're skilled to do it. You obviously, as a new employee, need to really understand the business. What are the metrics in the business? What are the benchmarks? How do we measure success? But ultimately, every business rises and falls based on its most expensive.
May have lost the connection there. Barry, can you hear us? We may have lost him.